Recording has started. Thank you all very much, dear devotees, for making the time to hear and study Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is the crown jewel of our scriptures. Our dear Srila Prabhupada has given this wonderful gift to us. We are very fortunate. We are very blessed to be reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. As you know, this is the most auspicious month of Purushottam. And to read Bhagavad Gita during this month gives us more than 1,000 times more benefit than reading it any other month. Also, for those who are 25 and younger, there is a Bhagavad Gita contest. The link has been posted. I request you to consider that, encourage you to register for it. They are going to focus on the Bhagavad Gita's practical applications in our life. So what we are going to do, we are going to read through, we are going to study, we're going to do an overview of all the 18 chapters in the next 2 weeks. And in that, we will focus on the key verses. And as we go along, we will point out how that can be applicable in our daily lives, how the instructions are practical. As we are reading along, some of you here have actually already read through these chapters, and this is more like a refresher course, more like a preparatory thing that you can use for the contest. If you have applications from your own life, please do go ahead, unmute yourself and share them with everybody. That will be a nice, wonderful Krishna Katha going on. The way we will do these sessions, they will be run between Aditya Narayan Prabhu and myself. We will cover 2 chapters in 9 different sessions. Each session is going to be an hour, plus a little bit of time for question and answers. And in these hours, we will cover 2 chapters. So we will go through the overview of the chapters. We are not going to go through, take a verse and do a deep dive, although every single verse, every single word that Srila Prabhupada has written in and of itself is worthy of deep dive. But we're going to do an overview. So that's what our intent is. I pray to all of you. I pray to Shri Radha Golokananda. I request all of you to join me in a prayer to Shri Radha Golokananda, Gaur Nitai, Srila Prabhupada, that we may all be successful in this endeavor that we have undertaken, and that we may all have a good understanding, a good overview of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Everybody please join me in the prayers. We start with the pranam prayer for Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Share. Somebody please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, bro.
Yeah, we can see.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for confirming. So we're going to go ahead and get started with chapter number 1, which is titled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. That's how we'll start. So Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So chapter 1 actually is where the armies are coming together. This is the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It's a great battle. And primarily, there's Kauravas and Pandavas on each side. Kauravas is led by Bhishma Pitama. He's the commander general, and then the Pandavas on the other side, led by the commander general is what's his name? Yeah, it starts with an I. What's the name? Um, anyways, I'm just drawing a blank right now. But anyway, so we have, sorry?
Drishtadumna, right?
Drishtadumna. Thank you. Correct. Drishtadumna. Thank you. So read by Drishtadumna, the commander general. And we have Pandavas on this side. We have Kauravas on side. And it so happens that by means of circumstance that these are cousins and they happen to be fighting against each other. So the first chapter is basically going to talk about giving us an idea, the formation of that battlefield. And Arjun is going to ask Krishna to take his chariot in the middle of the battlefield so he can see who he has come to fight. And by doing that, he will see a number of his uncles, friends, relatives, grandfathers, and so forth. And then he will be overwhelmed with nervousness, with anxiety. And then he will basically start to formulate a bunch of reasons why not to fight. And those are going to be some pretty good reasons. So let's just do a rundown, a read down of the first chapter. And as we go through, let's see where we can point out some practical tips, some key verses, and some practical tips of how they will be applicable in our lives. Text 1, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? Obviously, this here is very, very obvious. He's very curious. He wants to know what's going on in the fight. Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in the military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu. Now, this is Duryodhan basically saying, look at the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple of Drupad. And he's saying this to Dronacharya. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen equal to fighting to Bhim and Arjun, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virat, and Drupada. What he's basically doing is basically motivating, gearing up, so that he can see that there are all these fighters who are equivalent to those people on the other side, Bhim and Arjun. And those are the two people really that he's afraid of. There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chetika, Chekitan, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kunti Bhoj, and Saivya. There are the mighty Yuyudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamoja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. So initially he did a little bit of a survey of the opponent, and then now he's doing. Think about this like when more from a practical application is if we find ourselves in a healthy competitive sport and somebody has gone in and stepped down into a boxing match or a wrestling match or a baseball match or whatever it may be, you kind of generally want to get an idea of what your opponent is like so that you know how to strategize your game for a win. That's very practical, right? Also, similarly, when we go and we enroll ourselves in academics, for the youth who are actually in colleges and schools, when we enroll ourselves in academics, one of the first things that we do is, okay, I got to tackle this subject. What does that basically mean? I'm going to look at the syllabus. What are the topics being covered? So I get an assessment of what I'm going to tackle. And based off of that, I'll formulate a strategy in my mind. And then accordingly, I will formulate a plan. And I'll say, okay, I need to study 25 chapters. I'll formulate a plan. And, this chapter here, that chapter there. At the end of every chapter, like a little revision. And at the end of every 6 chapters, there'll be like another revision. Anything that I don't understand, I'm going to ask my peers, my teachers, et cetera, et cetera. You get the point. That's the practical application of how we would assess what is in front of us. So that's what he's doing. Then he's saying, let me tell you who are people in my army. So then you basically evaluate what your own strengths are. So there are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. So he's counting the strength on his side. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all are experienced in military science. Our Acharya says, they said, look at this, what he's saying. There are heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake, because eventually that is what is going to happen. It's not like they are going to kill the other enemy, they are actually going to get killed by themselves. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. So here he's saying, okay, Bhima and Arjun, though they're on one side, although they both are quite, powerful, we have Bhishma. Bhishma is basically unconquerable. Who can conquer it? And he has the boon of dying when he wants to die. Nobody can kill him. So we are going to be victorious. Those are all his indications. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Then Bhishma, a great, valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhan joy. So here, basically, when he's sounding the conch shell, it's like sounding the bells, when you start a boxing match, for example. After that, conch shells, drums, bugles, drums, hornets, etc., horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. On the other side, we have Lord Krishna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. So here we're getting some information about his conch shell. Then we have King Yudhishthir. He blew his conch shells. So everybody's just blowing their conch shells, basically saying, okay, let's go ahead and let's start the war. The blowing of these conch shells was uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and the earth, and it shattered the hearts of Dhritarashtra. This is basically saying the strength of the Pandavas is so much that it's actually shattering the hearts of Dhritarashtra. So that actually already gives us some indication about the conclusion of the war. At that time, Arjun, the son of Pandu, he seated on the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman. So this is again an important point here when we say marked with Hanuman. So here we have the Lord Krishna himself, we have Arjun, and he has the blessings of Hanumanji as well. Hanumanji is a great servant, he's a great devotee of Krishna, of Lord Ramachandra, and he's assisting Krishna, Lord Ramachandra, wherever he is engaged in his service. Practical application is wherever we are required for service, we look upon to our Gurujanas, we look upon to our Acharyas, we look upon to our seniors, we look upon to our temple authorities, and we say, okay, services are required here. Let's go ahead and engage in appropriate kind of services. No amount of services, big or small, all services are at the same level because they are all serving Shri Shri Radha Golokananda. Let me see who have come here to fight. Sanjay said, O descendant of Bharat, having addressed Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up his chariot in the midst of both parties. This is an important verse. Why would Arjun actually ask Krishna to bring his chariot in the middle of the fight? It's not like Arjun did not know who's coming here to fight. Arjun knew that very well, who's here to fight. Why would he want to come up with? And so here our acharyas actually explain, Srila Prabhupada explains that this is the situation that Krishna actually created in the mind of Arjun. He kind of, by his yoga maya potency, by his potency, he actually created the situation in Arjun's mind so that the environment could be made in such a way that Bhagavad Gita would be spoken. So this becomes a medium. Arjun becomes a medium. He asks this kind of questions. He'll have in this kind of a situation, put in this situation where he's going to display all signs of nervous breakdown. And then he's going to basically say, I don't know what to do. You tell me, you become my teacher. And that becomes an opportunity for Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we're going to go through these verses and I'm going to focus on. So here we see Arjun saw on different on the other side, he saw his friends, relatives. He became overwhelmed with compassion. This is a key point. A devotee is compassionate. A devotee is always compassionate to everybody else. When a devotee sees somebody else in trouble, the devotee does whatever the devotee could do to help them out. And so here, Arjun is actually is a topmost devotee, and so he looked at everybody and he's overwhelmed with compassion. And now he's going to basically give a bunch of reasons. He's going to show some symptoms in his physical body, and then he's going to start giving a bunch of reasons why he doesn't want to fight. Arjun says, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives before me in a fighting spirit. I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth is drying up. These are physical symptoms. You can ask any doctor around here. These are symptoms of a nervous breakdown. The mouth is drying up. My body is shivering. These are symptoms of anxiety, high levels of anxiety. My body is trembling. My hair is standing on end. My bow gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. I can't stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself. And he says, I can only see misfortune because he's overcome by compassion. And he says, see, I don't see how any good can come by killing my own people. These are my own people. How any good can come out from this? And he says, to what avail is the kingdom or happiness or even life himself, a life itself, when all those who may desire, they are now arrayed in this battlefield. Oh, Madhusana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brother-in-law, you look at this, every single relation of is lying on the ground. He says they are all standing there, right before me. Why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? So Arjun is basically again displaying tremendous amount of compassion. He says, I'm not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? Now he starts giving some reasons. Now, at this point of time, what Arjun is doing is he is basically not only coming across, he wants to make sure he's given some solid reasons where he doesn't just come across as being sentimental. Oh, I love my cousins so much, my maternal uncles, my grandfather, why should I just go ahead and kill them? He's now starting to come up with some kind of shastric reasons. And in by sense, he's trying to say maybe these are some reasons that he'll come up with that will convince Krishna, say, okay, fine, don't fight. And Krishna will say, yeah, I get it. You got pretty good reasons, I mean, there's no way to argue that. There's no way to debate. You got a good reason, my friend. Let's go back home. Forget about the whole kingdom, right? Practical application of that. Yes, we need to be compassionate, but we also need to keep our duty in mind. Very important. So here he's saying, sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna? And how could we be happy by killing our own people? If you kill your own people, how are you going to be happy? In other words, us devotees around this call and in our, pretty much here in our temple and congregation, we will not, find ourselves in a situation where we have to kill my own grandfather, for example. But what we will find is we'll get into arguments. Sometimes arguments can get heated. And so, we just need to make sure that we are respectfully addressing the situation where the party in front of us is not necessarily hurt, that we are putting forward our points politely and firmly if we happen to get into that kind of an argument, right? That's basically what this is saying. Oh, Janardhan, although these men, their hearts are overtaken by greed, they see no fault in killing one's family. Why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in such kind of things? With the destruction of family, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the family becomes involved in irreligion. This is another important point to understand, is that we need to make sure that the families, the communities are engaged in religion, religious activities, devotional service. Some kind of devotional service must always go on. If we find that they are all, found astray and they don't have a purpose in life, they don't have a direction in life, they will not necessarily have a foundation. We find young adults, boys and girls graduating from high school, going to college. A lot of things actually happen when they get to college, right? The environment changes, the academics, they change. It becomes overwhelming sometimes. So when that happens, what we need is we need a solid foundation for our young adults to fall back on should something happen. And that foundation is established by studying our scriptures. The spiritual foundation that we have prepares us to deal with the throwbacks of life. When we go through life, life is going to be a series of ups and downs. It's not going to be always up. It's not going to be always down. When we do have those moments of feeling down, we are not sure how are we going to be able to respond to that. And so we just want to be able to make sure that we learn these teachings from Bhagavad Gita and have this foundation to fall back on. We have devotee support structure. We have everybody else who can help us with any kind of situation that we may come up against. When irreligion is prominent in the family, women of the family become polluted, and then from the degradation of womanhood comes unwanted progeny. Again, this is basically saying that we need to respect the women. They are our mothers, sisters, and we need to respect them. Treat them with dignity. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life. And for those who both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. These ancestors of such corrupt families, they fall down because nobody is there, because there's no generations after generations. So therefore, what happens is that there's nobody doing these performances for the ancestors, and therefore, that process will basically stop, and eventually they'll just fall down. By the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. We want to make sure that our community projects keep moving forward. And in order for that to happen, we want to make sure that we have healthy community, healthy devotees, a good relationship, a good camaraderie among all of us, and so we can continue with these activities. We have so many devotional services that actually go on at the temple. We have outreach activities that are there. We just, what is basic principle of Krishna consciousness? Jare dekha tare kaha, Krishna upadesh. So here we go. That is part of your community project. When you talk to somebody, you talk to them about Krishna and, engage them in Krishna's service. And it doesn't immediately, it will not immediately happen. If you meet a total stranger saying, come on, do some service in the temple, that's not going to happen. But what you need to do is you need to, first of all, establish a connection. See, we as devotees, when we go out to the outside world, we need to, first of all, establish a connection and establish a relationship of friendship. And when we work with them, when we study with them, when we serve with them, they will actually get to see our behavior, our character. And then they will question, naturally, you're such a wonderful person. How is it that you're able to cultivate all these qualities? That question will come in some form or another. And so I say, hey, I have a practice that I follow, and here's what they are. And, if you're interested, I can share this with you. So we take into account that person's independence, and yet at the same time, making sure that they're positive, and we can take that opportunity to share more information. Okay, alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Better for me if the sons of the Dhritarashtra with weapons in hand were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Here again, Arjuna is giving a reason. He's saying, better if they just go ahead and kill me. Again, what this is saying is we should not just, throw our hands down. If we find ourselves in a difficult situation, we need to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to fight the situation, right? Just give me a second, please. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. And so after having said this, Sanjay says that Arjun, having spoken thus on the battlefield, he cast aside his bows and arrows, and he just sat on the chariot with his mind overwhelmed with grief. And that is basically the chapter 1. Again, going into the war, Arjun becoming overwhelmed by compassion, giving Krishna a whole bunch of reasons of why he doesn't want to fight. The real internal meaning behind that is that Krishna is creating a situation where Arjun will actually feel that way, and he will then ask Krishna to tell him what the right thing is to do. And that is a very important thing. When we navigate the ups and downs of our life, we turn to the Bhagavad Gita, we turn to devotees to help us understand what is the right thing to do. Okay, so that's the overview of chapter 1. Does anybody have any comments? Maybe we'll take like a 1-minute comment and then we'll move on to chapter 2. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to chapter 2, and I will go ahead and share my screen. And I have a PowerPoint presentation to share. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, very good. So, this is not going to work this way. I need to take this out. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes? Okay. All right. Chapter 2 is contents of Gita summarized. What we will see is Krishna is now basically going to give him a whole bunch of instructions. And there, Krishna is going to give a little bit of, everything. And then at the end of the chapter 2, Krishna is expecting that, okay, Arjun, I told you, everything of why you should fight, and just get up and fight. What's the problem? As Srila Prabhupada says, what is the difficulty? So at the end of chapter 2, Arjun is going to remain confused. He's still confused. And he will be confused because of a couple of reasons. Because first is that the instructions given in chapter 2 are not necessarily organized. And Krishna will then, go further. And it's kind of like Krishna is touching points here and every single one. And he's just doing that on purpose, by the way, so that Arjun will ask about each point and Krishna will get an opportunity to dive deep and give him more information. And then that will be like chapter 3, for example, about Karma Yoga, and chapter 4 and 5 and 6, like that. So it's kind of like Bhagavad Gita. If you look at all these chapters, it's like a helix. It goes back to the, a similar topic, but every time it moves forward, it gives you more information. So, second chapter starts off, okay, where Arjun is going to continue. There are more doubts that Arjun has. Then Krishna will start talking about the difference between the body and the soul. And this is an important topic to understand. Then Krishna will continue talking about Karma Kanda. And then he'll start talking about Sakam Karma, Nishkam Karma. So this is going to establish a yoga ladder. And then finally, he'll close off this chapter by a discussion on Samadhi. So at the opening scene again, at the end of chapter 1, and that in the verses, we'll see Dhritarashtra is happy. Why is he happy? Because Arjun is crying in desperation. And Dhritarashtra is thinking in his mind, oh, if Arjun is not going to fight, who is going to fight? Nobody else has the capacity enough to be able to defeat this other army, Kaurav army. And therefore, there is an opportunity, there's a chance for my son, Duryodhan, to live and be victorious. Because Arjuna was crying, and Sanjay was smiling actually at the time, and he knew what's going to happen, obviously, because he had the divine vision. Krishna was slightly smiling in verse number 10. Krishna slightly smiles, and then he's now going to turn to Arjuna, and then he's going to say. Now, what has actually happened is, well, actually, let's continue. So here in text number 4, Arjun is basically addressing Krishna as Madhusudan. Madhusudan. there are two Madhus. One is a relative of Krishna, forefather, and the other one was a demon. So he's saying, on one hand, he's imploring Krishna. I said, Madhusudan, as my forefather. On the other hand, he's saying that, oh, there was this demon, that Madhu that you killed. Well, if you want me to kill all these people, why don't you go and kill these people? So all these strong arguments that are given by Arjun, they just result in more confusion in text number. And that is a very, very important text number 7. So I'm going to go ahead and share text number 7. So that we can examine it. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and share my whole screen so you don't have to keep switching. Yeah. So this is text number 7. And here, Arjun is now saying, now I'm confused, totally confused about my duty, and I have lost all composure because of my miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Very, very important. What does Arjun say? Yat shreyasyan nishtanam bruhitan me shishyaste aham sadhi mam tvam prapannam. Earlier, Arjun and Krishna had a relationship of a cousin and a friend. But here, because Arjun is in so much of misery, he's in such a miserable state, he's saying, I'm totally confused. I don't know what to do. I'm going to be your disciple. I'm surrendered unto you. Please tell me what you want me to do. Please tell me what I should do. So, a few practical lessons that we can learn from this. First thing is, when we find ourselves in a state of confusion, when we find ourselves in a state of indecisiveness, we must approach a senior authority. We have Maharaj in our temple. You know, we have so many other Diksha Gurus, Shiksha Gurus, so many other Maharajas in our institution. All of them realized souls. We should go ahead and approach them. We have all kinds of problems come up, and not all problems will require us to go to these devotees. We have, for example, in our congregation, we have wholesome devotee care led by Ujjwala Rasagna Mataji, and she has a whole team. And the devotee care addresses different aspects. If you are not sure about one thing, how do I address this? There will be a devotee or a group of instructions or something that she will have, which will help us. So we just need to make sure that we are approaching somebody who can help us, and we need to first of all make sure that we need help. If we're in a state of confusion or a state of indecisiveness or what have you, we just need to make sure that we need that help. And the soul surrendered unto you. This is very important. This soul surrendered unto you is basically the ultimate instruction, ultimate conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Surrender to Krishna. We are all individual souls. We should surrender to Krishna. Please instruct me. Very clear. Very clear. Please instruct me. Tell me what I should be doing, because I don't know. I don't have enough mental strength or the capacity to be able to analyze the situation in a proper state of mind. So please tell me what I should do. So that is text number 7. Very, very important. And this actually is a turning point in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is it a turning point? Because up until this point, Krishna couldn't necessarily say something to Arjun because he's more of a cousin or a friend. Now Krishna takes the role of a guru. Krishna takes the role of a spiritual master. And that role of a spiritual master is essential for anyone who any seeker who's seeking out for spiritual knowledge needs to seek out a spiritual master. And so in this case, Krishna is going to become the spiritual master of Arjun. And here we also see this is basically from friend to guru. This is a rasa sandhi. It's a mixing of the rasas. I already explained that. Krishna is smiling. And then from text number 11, these are instructions for all of us, not only just for Arjun. So let's understand. So from text number 11 to text number 30, we need to understand that there is an existence of a soul. That soul exists within this body. We are not the body, we are the soul. That's the first instruction that Krishna is going to give Arjun. And that is the difference between the body and the soul, which at the macrocosmic level is the difference between spirit and matter. So that is the first lesson. This is also known as Sankhya. Sankhya is the point which you will need to understand is the understanding of, when we break down things into different elements, and we break things down to a point where we can understand what is what. And here we say that, okay, Sankhya basically says, okay, there's something called matter, and then there is something called spirit. There's something called body, and there's something called soul. And that body and soul are different. They are just right now both in this one place so that we are having experience. When the soul exits the body or matter is lifeless. Therefore, we call it as the death of the body. So Krishna is now going to explain that difference between body and the soul, and is going to talk about what the transmigration of that soul actually happens. So that's the first thing Krishna teaches, the difference between body and the soul. So he says, first thing you need to understand is that individuality exists. Please, dear devotees, no matter what what you hear, you read on Google and other things, individuality exists eternally. We are individual souls. We have always existed. We are existing today, and we will continue to exist. We will not do some kind of a spiritual suicide by merging into transcendence. When we achieve liberation, we will continue to remain as an individual, and we will continue to serve Krishna, just the way we are doing right now. So he begins and he says, first of all, your duty must be done. You must be tolerant, because he's going to basically saying that you should not be disturbed by happiness or distress. So this is a little bit, sometimes one might feel that, should I just be, in a like a robot kind of condition, without any emotions. That's not necessarily what this is saying. Yes, there will be emotions. But what that means is that we should not necessarily be too inflated or too deflated when something good happens and when something bad happens. When something good happens, we should basically be grateful to Krishna. When something bad happens, we should also be grateful to Krishna, because we are looking at that situation to learn something. And here Srila Prabhupada is actually saying that we have this soul which is residing in this body, and that radiates the consciousness all over to maintain the body. And he's giving the example of an injection. So in the next few verses, Krishna basically says there is a material vision and then there is a spiritual vision. The material vision is, I am the body and I am disturbed by the dualities, heat, cold, winter, summer, etc. Right? And that when the body is dead, I'm dead. So there are anxieties, perplexities, etc. that come up. On the other hand, from a spiritual standpoint, we need to see, okay, you know what? It's just the body that is being affected. I just need to be tolerant in all these situations. Because I, the soul, I'm eternal. I don't die. I don't take birth. The soul cannot be cut. The soul cannot be burned. This is going to be important for us to understand. The soul is a spiritual substance. Just like, let's say, a drop of water is a material substance. So I cannot cut water, but what happens if I place heat underneath that drop of water? It quickly evaporates. It dries up. The soul cannot be cut. It cannot be burned. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be killed. It cannot, nothing can happen to the soul. The body will die, but the soul remains the same. The soul will go to another body. That soul will remain the same. And when that soul is there within our body, it will pervade the entire body with the consciousness. Key lesson to understand. So one who understands that this consciousness is pervading the body, and that consciousness, if I prick my finger, I feel hurt. Why? Because actually there is some consciousness that's flowing there. That is a symptom of a soul existing. If I prick the finger of a dead body, there'll be no response. There'll be no response. So Krishna says that understanding that we are the soul, we are not the body, the soul does not die. He's continuing in that conversation. He says, first of all, we should not lament. Oh, what if I'm going to kill these people? You're not going to kill them. They are souls. They can never be killed. So we discard our old body, and then we because they become old and useless, and then we accept new bodies. So that is called death, and it is called birth of the new body. And then Krishna also mentions here, actually Srila Prabhupada gives the reference in this purport. He says the super soul and the jiva soul are like two birds on a tree. So in every body, there are two souls. One soul is me. The other soul is super soul or Krishna. I am trying to enjoy the material activities in this world. Krishna is basically observing. He's just waiting. Okay, when you're done, you can come back to me. This chart here gives you the differences, basically based on the different verses, the soul, the body, and one who is wise, what they actually get to know. So for example, the soul is eternal, the body is temporary. The soul, we have some description here. The dimensions of the soul. Srila Prabhupada has given this. 1/10,000, the tip of the hair. That is the size of a soul. It pervades the whole body. It is indestructible. It is imperishable. It is immeasurable. It cannot be killed. However, the body is measurable and it can be killed. It does come to an end. So when those who are wise, what do they say? Just do your duty. Don't be affected by this. So this chart gives you that, soul cannot be killed. There's no birth or death. It's indestructible. Whereas on the body, it's just the opposite. Soul gives up old bodies. So the young, and then the body is there, which becomes old. The soul does not age. And continuing on now. So basically, these are all the verses that actually talk about this Sankhya, the difference between the body and the soul, the difference between spirit and matter. If one happens to ask you, how is it that this plant is living? Because it is existence of a soul. Krishna continues, and then he says that this immutable soul cannot be killed and the temporary body cannot be saved. Therefore, what are you thinking of, Arjun? Just go ahead and fight. Okay. And this is basically Krishna's checkmate on Arjun. Krishna is actually basically, after he chastised him slightly, he gave him all these reasons about spirit and matter. And he said, okay, now you should fight. There's no need to lament. And then the verse number 29 is the Ascharya. It's an amazing verse. Why? Because here Krishna is giving a very, very beautiful, poetic definition of a soul. The soul, he says, is amazing. Why is it amazing? Because some people, they hear about the soul and cannot understand at all. And that is amazing. They just hear about it. Then there are people who have the ability to see the soul. And that is amazing. The fact that someone can see the soul, that fact is amazing. And that soul itself, that person itself is amazing. So there's so many things that Krishna actually points out about the soul. So this basically section here concludes the difference between the body and the soul. And again, here it says, some look upon the soul as amazing. Some people who are amazing, they look on the soul. Some look on the soul, which is amazing. Some describe the soul as amazing. Some people describe the amazing soul, and some people describe amazingly enough the soul. So looking, describing, hearing, all of that is amazing. So therefore, in this first section of chapter 2, what Krishna is saying is, there is a soul that is inside the body. It cannot be killed. Even if you think that, that there is no soul within this body. And this is sometimes, atheists will come up and say, oh, this body is just made up of chemicals. Okay. Did these body of chemicals just randomly just come about, and are they just magically brought together, and at the end of this life it's just magically going to disperse and disintegrate? There's actually the presence of the soul within the body. So Krishna is saying, you know what? Okay, even if you are an atheist, even if you don't believe the existence of a soul, there's just a bag of chemicals. What's the problem? Just go ahead and fight and kill them all. So therefore, he says that you should no matter fight. At the end of that section, Krishna thought that he needs more information. And then he continues on, and then he goes into the next section of he says, it's your duty and you need to fulfill your desires. So this is a karma section, to 31 to 38, karma kanda. And here he's basically saying that, listen, material gains, such as going to heaven or the kingdom, they come from fighting. And material losses, such as infamy and sin, if you don't fight, that's what you're going to get. So now Krishna is trying to motivate him, even from a karma kanda standpoint. Now, of course, devotees, we don't necessarily want to go to karma kanda. We don't necessarily want to go to heaven. What basically we want is we want Krishna's service. Whether we are in heaven or whether we are in hell does not matter. All we want is Krishna's service. So that's the one thing. Second thing is, what happens is that Krishna, after he explains that we are not the body, he does something very interesting. He explains sakam karma. And here he is going to establish this ladder. So we need to understand this ladder, that the bottommost of the ladder is those people who are atheists, those who absolutely do not believe the existence of God, or even a personality or a supreme being, or a being who's above us, who has some interest in helping us. They absolutely do not believe in that. Then there's the next layer of people above that who say, yeah, you know what? I know there is somebody above us, and therefore I'm going to do something. But that something is basically where I have my desires. I want to pass my test. I want to get a good job. I want to become the president of the country. Whatever desires one has, okay, they will actually put that desire in front, and then they will go ahead and do work. That is called sakam karma, because your desires will be there, and you will work to satisfy those desires. So again, this is just a chart comparison of, you know, why one should fight and why one should Arjun should fight and why Arjun should not fight. He's saying that there's no better engagement for you. Fight on religious principles. You'll be happy. If we do our duty, we find that we are actually more happy. And he says you'll win and enjoy your kingdom on earth, or you will die and just go to heaven. So therefore, those are all the reasons for you to fight. And he says if you don't fight, what's going to happen is you'll incur sin for neglecting your duties. So this is very important that Krishna is actually saying we should do our duty. Now, what does it mean to do our duty? If I'm a student, what is my duty? Is to focus on academics, focus on, you know, my building up my, I should say my student career, student growth, right? And whether that means participating in sports, necessary music activities, participating in all kinds of, you know, activities that will help me get into college. When I'm in college, again, I want to do my focus on my academics and my well-rounded growth. Maybe I want to do an internship, you know, eventually, so that I can go, when I go out of college, I can find a decent job. Or if I want to start up a business, you know, want to start up, what have you. That's my duty. What happens when you actually are out of college? You are into a family. I'm a mother. I'm a father. What was my duty? I need to watch out. I need to serve my children. I need to take care of them. I need to take care of their needs. I need to provide for them. I need to get, you know, some food on the table for them. Those are my duties, right? So again, this chart here is showing you that ladder, right, which basically starts from the bottom, is called V-karma. This is something that Krishna actually introduced. He said that is basically gross material life. And people say, I just want it, I want it now. Then he goes into karma kanda, where you're following the Vedic injunctions, you're doing something, but you still have desires because you still want to satisfy your senses, right? Sakam karma yoga is where you're working with desires. You think that, yeah, there is something above, you know, above me, some kind of a supreme being, and therefore I'll work, but I have some desires. And then above that comes nishkam karma yoga. And these are some important terms to understand. You may be asked some definitions on them. Nishkam karma yoga is referring to doing our job, doing our duty without desires, right? This basically says that we will work without desires and we are liking the Supreme. So this is the next stage. From a Gyan standpoint, this is feeling that you're not the body, so why you want to enjoy the fruits of the body? Just do our duty without attachment. Right? Then this actually goes on. There's another level of Nishkam Karma, and then the topmost level of yoga here is Bhakti Yoga. We work without desire. Our mind is fixed on Krishna, and we are basically surrendering to Krishna, doing devotional service, and realizing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how do we get there? By surrendering to Krishna, serving Krishna. Devotional service is so beautiful that it is the means to achieve Krishna. And when you achieve Krishna, it's not like you're going to give up your devotional service. You'll continue doing your devotional service. So it is a means and the end. That is the goal that is the purpose of human life, devotional service. So here's a chart that basically gives you, and I'll share this on the group. So you have you have reference to this for those who want to go back and take a look at this. And, for those who are preparing for the examination, some of these definitions will be helpful for you. So now, Krishna, up until this point, he talked about karma kanda, and then he talked about sakam karma yoga. Now he's going to talk about nishkam karma yoga. So here, he says that there is no loss or diminution, right, when you do this. So devotional service, when you do any kind of service for Krishna, there is absolutely no loss or diminution. What that means is, if I have accumulated $10,000 today in my bank, and if I die, and if I come back in my next life, and I say, Wells Fargo, my account number is such and such, I had saved $10,000, please give it to me. Do you think they will? No. Because they are like, I don't know who you are, but my devotional service goes with my soul. That soul carries the devotional service. If I do a little bit of service for Krishna, Krishna is going to be so happy. And in my next life, Krishna is going to say, that's the credit that you've accumulated. You're going to start your next life from that point on. You're not going to go back. This is a very important point to understand. So from Karma Yoga, we go to Jnana Yoga, and then eventually Krishna is going to introduce this term called Buddhi Yoga, which Srila Prabhupada is going to translate as devotional service. We go to text number 41. This is very, very important verse. Vyavasatmika Buddhir. This text number 41 is very important to, I should say, all of ISKCON devotees, because here in the 1950s, before Srila Prabhupada took his Jaladuta and he came to the US, he was struck by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. He says, Ekeha, become one, not become one like, become one with transcendence, but with one fixed intelligence. When you fix your intelligence in something, he becomes Krishna conscious. This is very important. Why? Because when we have if you think about practical application, when we sit down and if I'm going to study something, don't I need concentration? I don't need, if I have phones like that, we put it on silent and put it aside because I don't need any interruptions, right? If I'm really grasping a topic. People talk about multitasking and everything else, but multitasking is really doing a bunch of tasks in series repeatedly, and those tasks do not necessarily require you to think because they've become mechanical. That's really multitasking all about. But if you have to sit down and you have to study something and you have to focus on something, that requires fixed intelligence. Vyavasatmika Buddhir. So Srila Prabhupada actually, at that point of time, he read this commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he says, one should serve the words of the spiritual master. And we know what the words of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master was: go to the West, teach in English, print books. And he says the disciple must stick to whatever spiritual master orders. Simply by following on that line, one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What a wonderful instruction. Such a practical application. Focus on what your spiritual master told you. If you're not initiated, you're following Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is your spiritual master. Read his books, follow his instructions. You'll find Supreme Personality of Godhead. Don't worry about it. Karma Kanda is again the next few verses. He says the flowery words of the Vedas. He says Pushpitam Veda. He says these were Vedas, which is actually there. He says they offer really good, beautiful, attractive things for you to do, and once you're done with them, you'll achieve really great places in heaven. And he's saying that, you know what, you just need to transcend them. Don't go into too much into the Vedas. But he's at the same time not deriding them, because in the 15th chapter, Krishna is going to say that I'm the compiler of the Vedas. Vedanta Veda Videva Jaham. So he's going to say all that. So therefore, he doesn't deride. Why? Because 96% of the Vedas is Karma Kanda. Isn't that interesting? We talk about we need to know the Vedic scriptures, but 96% of that is Karma Kanda. The 4% that is remaining is what is basically giving us the insight into how to connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The next section here, Krishna is going to talk about Nishkam Karma Yoga. He says the Vedas deal with these three modes to become transcendental to those. Here are the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. He said, don't worry about being situated in goodness or in passion or in goodness or in ignorance, because these three modes, they actually have their own symptoms. Then they always fight for supremacy within the body. Even if you look at the 24 hours of the day, early in the morning is mode of goodness, during the day is mode of passion, towards the night is mode of ignorance. Therefore, people feel like sleeping. Therefore, they go to sleep and recharge their body, only to come, be rejuvenated and all good in the next day morning. So Krishna is saying you need to just rise above all these three modes of goodness and go to devotional service, right? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that, that detached work is what will lead the realized soul, knowledge of the soul. Detached work. When one becomes thus self-realized, he can gradually become blessed with the knowledge of the Lord and surrender unto him. See, it's not like you can build a ladder up to heaven. We've heard that phrase many times. People say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to build a ladder up to heaven. No, the reality is that you cannot build a ladder up to heaven because we just cannot go up there. But if Krishna wants, he can actually reach his hand down and he can pull us up. And how he can do that? When you become self-realized, we gradually become blessed with the knowledge of the Lord and we surrender unto him. As this kind of a surrender frees us from material world. Frees us from material world. And after liberation, he becomes eligible to attain Vaikuntha. This progression is known as the yoga ladder. And that yoga ladder is detailed in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Here's again a chart that basically establishes all the yoga ladders. So Vikarma, Karma Kanda, going from the bottom to the top. Again, you get to read more information here. And finally, going into the last section of Samadhi, Krishna is going to talk about Haribol, can you hear me?
Yes, bro.
Now, Krishna is now going to talk about Samadhi. You know how he started off by saying we are not the body, we are the soul. Then he gave explanations on working with material desires. Then he says, well, what he really wants to explain is Buddhi Yoga, or working without material desires. That's the duty, fully work resulting in Samadhi, or being fixed on the absolute truth. So that's the state of Samadhi, Sthita Pragya. Arjun is asking 4 essential questions. He's saying, what is the symptoms of one whose consciousness is such merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? Where does he sit? Where does he talk? These are not literal. It's not like you're going to find, a sadhu sitting down under a banyan tree in a meditative pose, been doing some kind of a yoga. Oh, that's the Siddha Pragya. Because he's physically seated like that. He's physically walking like that. These are metaphorical questions to understand that one who is a Sthita Pragya, what is that person's language? Yeah? When you can look at Srila Prabhupada, there's our prime example. And then he continues on, he says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Arjun's first question is, who is this Sthita Pragya? What are the characteristics? There are no material affection. They're detached from happiness and misery. And they are fully satisfied by fixing his consciousness of himself. How does he speak? How are his intelligence of words affected by another's affection? Anger, neutrality. In other words, how does he respond? That's what his thing is. How does he speak means how does he respond when he is being agitated? How does he react to uncomfortable situations? Sita Dhir Muni, one who is a sage with steady mind. So this sage mind is steady. They are not agitated by anger or provocation from another person or such like. How does he sit is referring to how does he not engage in his senses? What's his mentality? How does he restrain from those harms? How does he control his senses? And then Krishna talks about this wonderful text 62 and 63. And in this text, he's talking about the process of spiritual fall down. And here he's also giving us practical application. So he starts off by when we contemplate on the object of the senses, either positively or negatively, that is when we are thinking about something. Oh, this is something wonderful. I want. What happens? We start have feelings towards that object. And then when we develop an attachment towards them. And then at that point of time, we are willing to do something about it. And that leads to lust. And if that lust is satisfied, it will probably be leading to anger because it will be temporary. If it is unsatisfied, it will also lead to anger. And then one gets angry. What happens? That
person gets deluded. The memory is lost. The intelligence is lost. And one is back down to the material pattern. So if one is trying to elevate themselves to the spiritual platform, we need to be very careful about this emotion called anger. This is a practical application of anger management. Anybody who's having, we all have moments of anger, but what's the right way to address it? The right way to address it is to recognize that we are not attaching to any particular object. We are not attaching, we are not using our senses and contemplating about the material objects and detaching ourselves from it. So that's the way to control anger and not have a spiritual fall down. We are a little bit over time, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this section. So this is chapter 2, last section. How does he walk? What are his senses? Again, he has a higher taste. Param drashtva. He has a natural renunciation from the sense object. He's not interested in that. He's fixed by the intent. And the last stage, basically, I'm sorry, the last concluding verses is talking about samadhi. Krishna is saying, just as the huge ocean is not disturbed when there are rivers that flow into it, similarly, that person is not disturbed. That person's mind is so still, so vast, so calm, like the ocean, that it is not disturbed when the desires actually flow into this person. That is a state of samadhi. And then finally, he concludes, and at the end of chapter 2, Arjun is still confused. Because all these topics have been presented, but not necessarily in an organized. At the end of chapter 2, Krishna is looking for an opportunity for Arjun to ask a question. And that's what Arjun will do at the beginning of chapter number 3. Okay. Thank you very much, dear devotees. I know we started at 7:35. We are like just about 4 minutes over. And we concluded chapter 2, the summary of chapter 2 as well. So we're doing the whole chapter 1 and the whole chapter 2. We touched on the key points. I touched on some of the practical applications. I see that there is a question. Vishnu has a question. Did anybody have a question? Does anybody have a comment? You can unmute yourself and you can say something.
Yes, bro. If nobody is there, I have 2 questions. If anybody else wants to go first, they can go.
You can go first.
Okay. So essentially, what is the relevance of Krishna mentioning the yoga ladder to Arjuna's situation? Could you explain that more clearly? I have an idea, but it's not so clear. The relevance of Krishna's mentioning the yoga ladder to Arjuna's situation.
Yes, good question. So not only is that yoga ladder relevant to Arjuna's situation, but it is actually also relevant to our situation. Krishna is basically saying, so he's basically trying to convince Arjun to say that, okay, you should fight no matter what. First of all, he says, you know what, just do your duty. Don't worry about the outcome. He's talking about that. So initially, he gave him about karma kanda. Karma kanda is where he's saying, okay, you don't want to fight, but listen, here's what you will gain when you do fight. The relevance to Arjun is to motivate him to fight. Since Arjun is asking all these questions on our behalf, the relevance to us is to say, listen, you're in this material world and you need to do something for you to get something. So karma kanda is where I want to get some benefit from, whoever, and I'm getting those benefits. And in order for you to do that, you should do certain things. It is establishing a level of connection between us and the supreme being. And this is basically the very basic, the foundation to realize that yes, there is someone who is existing beyond this material universe. That's the first thing to understand. And it is not basically just a bunch of chemicals that came together. Then, Krishna goes and talks about Sakam Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, and ultimately Bhakti Yoga. So the relevance of this ladder is for Arjun to understand that no matter which ladder you feel yourself to be at, your duty is to do the fight. The relevance to us is no matter where we are in our yoga ladder, we should not refrain from doing our duty. We should do our duty. So when the question is, are we doing it for ourselves, as in karma kanda, or are we going to do it for a being who's higher than us, one who's my creator? And whether that is sakam or nishkam, that is my, and then ultimately is bhakti yoga. The relevance is that, okay, what I should really be doing in this life, that is my supreme purpose. That is my ultimate purpose of human life. So everybody should actually have that kind of an understanding. And that is what Krishna's purpose is. So he can give you that information and then we can follow through on that. Did that help, Advaita?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay, then we will conclude the section today. Thank you very much, dear devotees. Tomorrow we will have Aditya Narayan Prabhu taking the next chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4. And then Wednesday I will continue. And then Thursday Aditya Narayan Prabhu will again continue. And like that, we will move on with the 2 chapters at a time, covering the whole of Bhagavad Gita by the end of next week, by Thursday of next week. That is our goal. That is our desire. That is our prayer. Thank you all very much. Have a great night and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna. Thank you for teaching us.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Vikasananda Prabhu.
Yes?
I had just a small question, Prabhuji, a clarification.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
through
Who is speaking?
this is Jishnu.
Yes, Jishnu, go ahead.
So when we were going through the presentation, we were talking about the yoga ladder, and then it was for some of the rows and columns, it was combining Buddhi Yoga and Nishkam Karma Yoga. So I was wondering, are those the same thing? Buddhi Yoga and Nishkam Karma Yoga.
So Buddhi Yoga, so Buddhi Yoga, Srila Prabhupada defines that as devotional service, and Nishkam Karma Yoga is basically saying that, I want to basically just do the service for you without necessarily expecting anything in return. I just simply want to do that. So at that level, yes, you can think Buddhi Yoga, and that part 2 of Buddhi Yoga, part 2 of Nishkam Karma Yoga to be essentially similar. And then the stage beyond that, beyond Nishkam Karma Yoga, is Bhakti Yoga. Because in Nishkam Karma Yoga, you still actually are doing karma without any desire, but your karma is your action is still being done, but you don't necessarily know. In Bhakti Yoga, you're actually doing your action specifically for Krishna. So that is basically you're tying it and you're doing it with a definitive purpose, in knowing that this is my ultimate duty that I need to do in my life, my ultimate responsibility I need to do in my life. Does that help?
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
there
Nice
is
question. Yes.
And there is one more. So at the beginning, when Arjuna he's asked like giving reasons for why he's not fighting, and one of them is that the family tradition will be destroyed, and then he goes on like a tangent about irreligion and then unwanted population. Is that all considered one reason of his, or is that separate reasons?
There are separate reasons. There are actually 5 different reasons.
No, but like the one. Okay, so that would be 5 different parts, Prabhu.
So there are totally 5 different reasons. He's afraid, he is indecisive, he's compassionate, he wants to make sure the family traditions are followed. He doesn't want to make sure any unwanted progeny, the community projects need to be like that. There are 5 different reasons. So your question is about family something and the women and the community projects. It was unclear.
Okay, so for Arjuna, let's see, I'll get the right. So Arjuna, he starts off with the family tradition is going to be destroyed if we kill the people on the battlefield. And then he goes and says that irreligion will be pronounced, and then women will be polluted, and then degradation of womanhood, and then unwanted population, and then hellish life, and then ancestors would fall down. So is that all just one reason?
Yeah, you could say that, like family family will, traditions will be destroyed. That's one thing. And then women getting polluted, that's another thing. And then he's giving a corollary. When that happens, what happens is that you get unwanted progeny, and then you get the community projects are destroyed. So that would be considered as one thing.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. That was my
Okay.
question.
All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.